Hey, I'm Ed Bolian. Welcome back to my garage and the car collection. And it's been a while since I've done a garage update video. There have been some changes in the cars that are here and not here. And honestly, this might be the last one because I don't know where it could possibly go from here. I mean, if you told me when I was a teenager that this was ever possible, I would have slapped you in your face. But as John Ficarra said, I think I have reached peak Ed. And let's look around the cars. Let's see what you think. I'll tell you what's going on with each of them. And yeah, welcome back.
Everybody, welcome back to the What Can We Get Into podcast. I'm your host, Justin Brown. This week we have a fantastic guest, somebody that I have been a huge fan of since, I don't know, I would say 2016 or 2017. I think he only had like 50,000 subscribers on YouTube when I first started watching him. But everybody welcome Ed Bolian.
Thank you for having me. It's a very nice introduction, and thank you for watching.
So I bet you can probably guess what is the first video I saw of you when it was 2017. Can you guess, Ed?
Was it about me buying a Lamborghini from a special person?
It was this very special person. Yeah, exactly. So that I'll never forget. I was scrolling through YouTube. I'm a chiropractor, by the way, down here in Dallas, Texas. And okay. I was in between classes trying to find, some way to get off my mind off of school at the time. And I see the little thumbnail on the side, and it was, there was two videos. I think the very first one I ever saw that I didn't click was something about like I did 165 miles an hour or something. I think that was another video at the time. But this one was I bought a Lamborghini from a prostitute. Yes. And I'm like, wow, Ed is the king of clickbait, I feel like, early on. But
that's actually what happened. That was
exactly.
Like, try to make it the story live up to the title.
So I watched this video and I couldn't help but get just so enthralled with your content at the time. And then I realized that basically you were trying to cross brand a little bit with your app, VinWiki. Will you tell us a little bit about how you got into that?
Yeah, in 2016, some friends and I started an app called VinWiki. The idea being that it'd be a crowdsourced version of Carfax, kind of like a social vehicle history reporting platform. And we got it launched, got it built, and like most technology entrepreneurs, you expect that the world is just going to instantly adopt this and tell all their friends, and everything's going to grow and you'll become the next multi-gazillionaire. But in fact, we realized that it was going to take considerably more money than we all had to market this. So about a year later, we launched VinWiki Car Stories as a YouTube concept of just me and my friends sitting around telling our best car stories. And certainly it did work to promote the app. We've now got about 500,000 users in the app, but also it became kind of its own business. And almost immediately it became my job to make internet videos every day. So pretty much every weekday since June 25th of 2017, we've released a long-form VinWiki car story. And we've now got, a couple million subscribers and a couple billion views. And it's been a wild ride.
So it had to have been very early on that I saw you, because it would have been in 2017, and I remember it being, there wasn't a lot of views, you didn't have a lot of subscribers, and I just think that's the beauty of YouTube and the algorithm on how you can just get in front of people that maybe have similar interests. I had always had interest in cars. I don't know if you remember this. This is kind of a way back. If you go back in our thread on Instagram, a long time ago in 2017, I sent you a video of me riding in a gold Aventador. So that is what sort of sparked my love for cars, specifically Lamborghinis. And then once I saw you get in front of the camera as much as you did early on, I was like, this guy has the gift for gab. And then, Rabbit as well. Rest in peace, Rabbit, by the way. He just watching it was so, it took me away from what I was, my daily, chores of work and school and all of that. So it was a really good kind of get away from that. But I did download your app, and I used it quite a bit because I was like, how cool is this? That you can grab a VIN or use a plate to get somebody's VIN and look and see where this car has been. So I was fresh to the Dallas market because I moved down here for school at that exact time in 2017. And it was super fun going to car shows and pulling VINs and looking, this car was in Santa Monica or was in Miami or Broward. Or I always thought that was interesting. How did you Is all of that information with VINs and plate to VIN, is that something that you guys do proprietary, or is that all public knowledge?
No, it is a proprietary thing. We link with the state systems, and we can pull the VIN, which is not a personally identifying information or anything sensitive, from the plate in the registration, the same way that a traffic camera could. And so that's something that it's not easily just publicly accessible, although we make it free. But yeah, it's something that the states make available.
Now, do you feel like when you started VinWiki, did you feel like that was going to be like, oh, hey, we're going to build this thing, it's going to pop off, I'm going to sell it, exit? Once the YouTube thing started to grow, did your mindset switch to like, hey, I can actually probably make a good living off this and then have VinWiki kind of running up the side? I assume your mindset and attention has shifted. Is that correct?
It has changed a bit because, you start a tech company or an app and you think, all right, yeah, we're going to go the normal Silicon Valley fundraising route and the business will have a life in that way. And then, a year later, you're starting to make a little bit of money on YouTube. So you have this kind of like negative cost of user acquisition, which is unheard of in the technology world. And so I didn't know what to make of it for a very, very long time because, social media content is generally kind of a lifestyle business. People don't generally get rich off of making a lot of internet videos. And the real reason it always made sense was that it was trickling into downloads. Now, eventually it became a job, but at the end of the day, it changed the way the company looked because the company made money in a very unorthodox way. And so you've got one thing that you'd want to have explosive growth, and then you'd have you can't get exponential growth of a social audience. It's always very linear. And so I still am not 100% sure how to look at it because it's a very, very unique circumstance. But
exactly.
At the very least, it's working somewhat.
That's great. And I think that if people don't know you and your story, you have one of the coolest stories on how you got to where you are with first basically putting every dollar and cent in financing power to your advantage to acquire some vehicles. You were in college, I believe, correct?
That's right, yeah.
So you started a exotic car rental program. Do you think that is something that you could, if you were in college today, that would not be possible, correct?
No, now you have to prove your income. Back then, you could just tell the banks what you thought you made, and they would accept it as stated income loans. And so that has changed a lot. And I recognize that there are significant parts of my career and my personal financial growth that happened very much because of the moment in time when I was there, right? At the time when I went to college in Georgia, public college was free, and so Georgia Tech was free. When we bought our first house, it was 2010, which was the bottom of the housing market over the last 50 years. And so, there's a lot of things that just because I was born in 1985, I was in the right place at the right time, not because of who my parents were, not because of anything other than just, sheer luck. And I've been able to leverage a lot of that into, some useful stories and some useful money. But at the same time, there will be advantages for people who are turning 18 tomorrow that I could never imagine. And they may not recognize right now. But when they look 10 years from now at what their financial portfolio becomes, then I think they'll start to say, that was made a whole lot easier because of that decision that was very just of the moment.
I think that that's so true, and just right place, right time, and knowing that maybe if you're trying to do something, it may not be the right time. I was just watching a Gary Vee video yesterday, and he was talking about how 5 years before Uber became a thing, it was called Magic Cab or Magic Taxi, and it really didn't do well. And then 5 years later, with more and more smartphone usage and things like that, it was able to have the time and the infrastructure in the world to basically be a thing. And I think that's kind of what you're talking on here is you were kind of right place, right time for what you were trying to do. And so you took that business and then you went to sell cars at Lamborghini Atlanta, correct?
I did, yeah. So I had started the exotic car rental company out of my dorm room in college and grew that to, 5, 6 cars that were, rented out quite often. And it was a healthy enough business. It was never going to be wildly profitable, but I was just interested in finding different ways to be in and around these cars and to evangelize the idea of how cool supercars were because as, mainstream or commonplace as Lamborghinis and Ferraris have become since then, it was not something that even in Atlanta you saw very often. And so I just, it was one of those things that as I learned about exotic cars, not coming from a car-loving family, I was just enamored with the idea of that and Cannonball and all these crazy things in the folklore of automotive journalism of the day. And so, yeah, I did that for a while, about 5 years, and eventually, kind of as the economy bottomed out and anybody that really wanted to be around one of these cars could just buy them for pennies on the dollar since the economy had collapsed, the quality of my ownership replacement customer base sort of eroded, and I found it a lot harder to keep the cars in good shape because they were being more mistreated. And so, yeah, I kind of sold out of that business and went on to sell cars, sold Lamborghinis mostly, but we were also a McLaren, Lotus, Aston Martin, and Spyker dealer here in Atlanta. And that was a lot of fun. One thing I learned from being in the rental car business is how well I would have been served by just spending 6 months or so or a summer internship working for Hertz or Enterprise, because I didn't know enough about the business. I just knew it probably had the potential to be successful. I probably wasn't the right owner-operator, but hey, I wanted to be. And so I wanted to learn more about the dealership world, really as a way to figure out if I wanted to do that from a more entrepreneurial perspective.
And back when you worked at Lamborghini Atlanta, the sheer number and value, I'll say, of supercars was what percentage of it what it is today? What would you say?
Oh, a small fraction. I mean, there are more $100,000 cars being sold every year now than existed at that point. And so the explosion of production has been a very interesting phenomenon, especially in the economic fertility of the post-COVID years in the car marketplace. So certainly there were some shortages and things like that, which didn't really apply to the volume that the exotic car manufacturers were trying to achieve. But now there are so many more cars. And, you compare it to just, cars like I love personally, like, Murciélagos, Diablos, Countaches, and things like that. There are none of those relative to the volume of Aventadors or Revueltos and Gallardos and Huracans and things like that.
You mentioned something that always strikes me about you, and it's the Aventador. You seem to avoid the Aventador like the plague. Why is that?
When I was at the dealership when the Aventador launched, nobody liked it initially. Eventually, everybody kind of grew to enjoy the car and like it sort of in spite of its transmission and stuff like that. I like driving Aventadors a lot, but my goal was always to be able to afford cars that I couldn't afford. And the best way to do that is for them not to go down in value. And so I've always said that I like to look like I won the lottery 10 years ago, because generally speaking, when you're starting to look at cars that are 10 to 20 years old, they've stopped depreciating and they're starting to settle into whatever economic pattern they're going to have over time. And so I was much more interested in cars not depreciating than me buying exactly what the 16-year-old kid inside of me was trying to dream of or aspire to. And so I've come close to a ton of Aventador deals, but I've never bought one. I expect I'll own one at some point, although I just love Mercies so much more, mostly because of how cool they were when cars were, for the first time, the coolest thing in my world. And so the car came out when I was 16 years old, and seeing all the road and track articles and Car and Drive and all the records and things that it was setting to me was just perfect. And so there are things that an Aventador can't do for me emotionally that cars that just hit me a decade earlier can.
And obviously with your business, VinWiki, you have done a tremendous job at knowing how many of these were in production and the rarity of them, right? So in terms of production of Murciélagos versus Aventadors, how does that look?
Yeah, so there's 4,099 Murciélago VINs. There's actually about 3,945 total cars built. And that was something that no one really had a breakdown of. Even the factory didn't. It took over a decade of me asking the Lamborghini factory for Mercy records for anybody there to even figure out if they existed. And finally, I got a 98-page PDF file of all the VINs, not in order. And so I had to sift through it. We ran like 5 different OCR softwares over it, and then developed ideas of how we would sift out errors, O's for zeros and things like that, I's for ones, and then building out the structures and arranging them so they'd be digestible. And yes, we were able to learn, where they are around the country, dividing them down by the submodels of the types, so coupes, roadsters, 640s, 670s, and that, yeah, to me that was really, really fun. It was very much kind of in the idea of what VinWiki is all about, in finding different ways to kind of add to the stories of these cars as stakeholders, enthusiasts, users, owners, drivers, things like that.
How many Lamborghinis have you owned in your life?
That's a good question. I've had 9 Mercies. I've had maybe 7 Gallardos, 2 Diablos. Is that it? Yeah, so a bunch. And and honestly, I've never lost money on one. And that's one of the things that, not as like a feather in my cap, but as I've just tried to avoid only chasing personal preference, but sometimes focusing on the cars that I really do believe in. And in many cases, you end up loving them far more than you ever would have expected to. Like I bought a Diablo SV that was apparently a Yakuza gang member's car out of Japan from like this little arcade auction, and I bought it about a year ago, and I just love the thing. Like I like it so much more than I expected to, and I'm having a blast with it. And it'll go up in value because it's the right age, and just the people that grew up loving it are sort of coming into a world where they can participate in the market in a different way. And that's always been another part of, I guess you'd say, my car buying strategy, is that if I am reckless in buying these cars just a little bit early with too much debt and too much leverage, the more responsible members of my age and enthusiasm cohort start to participate in the market a few years after me, and that starts to force the market upward. And that works better when there's a more finite number of cars, and that doesn't really apply to Aventadors. There's 12,000 and change Aventadors, almost as many as there are Gallardos. But, and it's not that they're not awesome, and that there isn't an audience that just loves them more than anything else, the same way that I love my stuff. It's just a different group of people.
That's so interesting that you say that, and that's why I think that you're probably like the Huracans and the Aventadors don't get you as excited, because there's more of them. There's more of them on the road, and so you've taken your car collection and you've pared it down a little bit to make a pretty big purchase I've seen in the past few months.
I did.
So I know this was something on your bucket list, and seeing it, as soon as I saw the car, I thought to myself, gosh, I've seen this thing in so many articles, so many YouTube videos, so many TMZ. So, wow, how does that feel to own a Bugatti?
I still walk into the garage every day and I'm like, oh, look, it's still over there. Nobody came to get it yet, because it's that crazy to me. And when I bought my first manual LP640, which is really my favorite car, and I had a proper crisis of motivation where I wasn't exactly sure if I wanted to go to work anymore, because you work to buy these crazy cars. I mean, food and shelters for the birds. Like I just want
you got
cars.
Them.
And now I do. And so after that, and especially as I started VinWiki and I needed to be more motivated, I needed an insane car goal to chase. And so I said, without any real mental framework or financial infrastructure to move me in the direction of being able to do so, I said, I want to buy a Bugatti. And I don't know that I necessarily even believed that I was going to be able to do it, but I told a good friend that, and he's like, okay, great, yeah. So over the years, I made a bunch of offers. That was probably in 2017, 2018. And so, yeah, it took me, I guess, about 6 years to figure out a way to put it together. And yeah, I ended up buying a 2012 Veyron Grand Sport. I sold 7 cars to be able to cover the down payment, and got a gigantic loan from Premier Financial Services for it. But I think it's a healthy financial decision. I like to think so. But the car is really, really cool. Much cooler than I expected I would ever be able to get. I thought I'd just get the worst one on earth. And this is maybe the worst quality example that I could at least track down at the time. But it was the Frankfurt Motor Show car at the Bugatti's display. And it was the first car that Bugatti put the Super Sport wheels on and the clear tail lamps on, which became kind of a very well-loved configuration on the later cars. And then it was sold to Birdman of Cash Money Records. He gave it as a present to Justin Bieber. He sold it to Floyd Money Mayweather as a preemptive celebration of beating Conor McGregor in their little boxing match a few years ago. And then he sold it to Lil Uzi Vert, who sold it, and then I bought it from that guy. So it's been around, it's seen some things, but there's some really, really cool pictures of it, that's for sure.
That is absolutely incredible. How close were you to acquiring, I remember seeing some videos on this, but how close were you to getting the Houston Lake insurance fraud Bugatti?
I was very close. I was talking to Andy House, the guy who drove it into the Galveston Bay and who had kind of like taken it halfway apart, and they had started painting it different colors. And at the time it was $300,000. And I'm going to say that was probably 2018, 19. And the problem with it was like a saltwater flood is the worst possible thing that could happen to a car. And so there wasn't a whole lot of confidence that the car could just be made to work. Everything was corroded. There were a lot of issues, obviously. And at $300,000, you were so far past what you could recoup from a just parts value that I couldn't really figure out how to make it make sense, even anticipating some return from a content strategy perspective. Now, today, there is much more money to be made on YouTube on a per video or per view basis. The ad rates have probably tripled. And so it is more possible for somebody like Freddie Tavares, who recently bought the flooded McLaren P1, to turn that into a financially viable product. He has not achieved that yet, but he aspires to do so. And so I wasn't sure that I could make, I thought the whole thing was probably worth $150,000, honestly, as furniture. More so than as a car, that I could take the seats and the engine out and make a table and stuff like that. And I talked to Premier Financial Services about that. I was like, look, I'm going to need to finance this car. It does have a clean title because the insurance realized that it was fraudulent, and so it has a clean Carfax of all things. But I couldn't make it work financially, and I think I'm glad I didn't, because Houston Crosta just finished building the car. It took him at least 5 years and much more money than I could have come up with. Yeah.
Speaking of saltwater and what it does to cars, what do you think the car community has lost out in California with this? Do you know of any specific examples? I saw an Instagram video of a bunch of 300 SLs and stuff like dumped in a Walmart parking lot, and people are like, look at this. What do you know anything about this? Know anybody personally? What are your thoughts?
I know of a handful of people that have lost cars. I think most of the bigger collections are safe. What will have lost are a ton of just cars in garages. And so these giant homes that generally had big garages and had a lot of space, those cars we've lost a lot of. I heard of one Enzo that burnt, but I'm sure, it's thousands and thousands of structures that are burnt, and you're averaging multiple cars for each one. I have to imagine, we're talking about losing 20 to 30,000 interesting cars, many significant cars, and it's going to be interesting to see what that does to the market at large. Most of the cars are probably pretty well insured, even more so than some of the homes could be, just given some of the infrastructure concerns and the things that the insurers were having. It's a heartbreaking situation so far beyond the potential loss of cars, and just the loss of life and the loss of families' homes and cherished things and stuff like that. But it is going to be a significant impact and a ripple that gets felt for a long time. We thought that might have happened in the flooding in Dubai. But after that happened, all of the insurers immediately declared bankruptcy. And when the government stepped in, it doesn't seem like many cars have been paid for, because that was probably a loss of like 250 to 500 like hypercar level cars. And nobody really knows. There hasn't been that much extra demand in the marketplace for them.
When was that Dubai flood?
Middle of last year.
Okay. Speaking of losing cars, you mentioned losing cars in California. I can't help but think we haven't heard a lot about the El Chapo F1.
That has been another car that I have chased for years and years.
Do you think it exists still?
I do. I do. I have not gotten a compelling modern photo of the car in quite some time, so I don't know where it is. The two leading theories are that it went to MSO, was restored to a different spec, and now lives its life as like a normal silver McLaren F1, or that it is still owned by El Robachivas, the goat thief's son, and I've heard it's in his living room. So maybe that's true. Again, I haven't seen a photo of the car, so I can't say with much confidence where it is, but I think it probably still exists.
I look forward every time I see that on my subscribers list. Every time I see a El Chapo F1, I get like a kid in a candy factory. I'm like, oh, Ed's getting closer to finding this vehicle. I think that would be awesome. Is that your next? It has to be.
You know, I am probably as close to buying a McLaren F1 in my current position as I was to buying a Bugatti when I made that goal. I don't know that I want to be rich enough to have a $20 million car. Or I don't even know what the credit requirement for that would look like. But I have thought a lot about like what does the next goal need to be in order to stay motivated, keep your head down, and keep grinding. And I haven't quite figured it out yet. I mean, that's probably it. But what a stupid thing to even say out loud.
I love it. I look forward to the updates in the future. I always love the barn finds and just hidden cars. Everybody's got to love that. So
for sure.
Let's switch gears here. So I named this podcast, What Can We Get Into? So it's a newer podcast I'm doing this year. And it's basically because in my life, I've had different chapters of cars, of coffee, of bourbon, of, all these different, sectors, chapters of my life. So when I first got into VinWiki, I was in this car. I had all these goals of, I want this car and this is my dream car. I still have those, but, I've like leapfrogged to different chapters of my life. One thing that I noticed in the back of a podcast that you recently did was a nice little bourbon collection.
Yes.
Is that something that you're into?
It is. It is. We go through a lot of liquid courage in this chair where people are trying to formulate and compose the best versions of their best stories. And sometimes that takes a little additional lubrication. I started drinking and collecting bourbon several years ago, and just based on friends telling me how cool it was, letting me taste some stuff, and I enjoyed it. And about a year ago, I just thought, what'd be really cool is some VinWiki. And so we launched a VinWiki collaboration with a local distillery, ASW, and released a small batch. It was an 8-year-old heavy wheated bourbon last year, and it sold out really quickly, which was really, really fun. So we may try to do some more. But I love it. Love some good Eagle Rare and Old Forester 1920, and usually pretty big, pretty fun, pretty punchy stuff. So I'm in Dallas now. A couple years ago, I was in Louisville, Kentucky, and that's when I got into it, is when I was pretty much, not that I was handcuffed into it, but I always joke, when you're in Louisville, Kentucky, you either like horse racing or bourbon, or you're not going to have a lot to do. Being engulfed by the bourbon scene was something that I got into 2, 3, 4 years ago. And like I told you, I'm a chiropractor. So when I was there, it was like one of my first weeks on the job there. The guy was like, so kid, you into bourbon? I go, no, I can't say I am. He goes, well, it's like Pokemon trading cards for adults. So just give yourself a couple months, you'll be into it. And I'm like, this guy's crazy. So he was completely correct. Fast forward 2 years after he told me that, I'm going, I don't like to admit this, but I'm stopping by the local liquor store, not to buy something 3 times a week, but just to look. At least that's what I tell my wife. Yeah, window shopping. Yeah.
You never know. You might walk in there and they might have something allocated that you're like, holy cow, this is awesome. Is there a bourbon that is a grail for you to own?
I drink it all. So I was at a charity auction and I ended up with a bottle of Thomas Handy. Is right. Wonderful. So I'm about halfway through that, which people see that half full in the back of the set and they're like, oh wow, okay, this guy's
So Ed, you treat your bourbon like you treat your cars. You use them, you get them dirty. And I'm totally a fan of that. I unfortunately I have more bottles than I can drink, so there are some that are pretty full, but there's nothing better than sharing a nice pour of whiskey on a celebratory event or with a family member. I think that's just, it's awesome. So
For sure.
what other things are you into? So what gets, if we separate you from cars and YouTube and all of this, what keeps you ticking?
Well, right now it's chasing young children around playing sports a lot. So,
Sure.
And that's one of the things where I'm not sure that the next goal is really buying a thing or having a thing. I think it's, figuring out a way to maybe still make money on the internet and then raise well-adjusted children, which is an uphill battle. Continuing to just be the right parent, be the right husband, and just be the right family member that everybody needs me to be, more so than just being Ed the car guy. And I've liked to achieve and hopefully maintained a good balance in that regard. But I think that it's not that the focus is shifting away from cars. It's just that maybe the aspirational focus is.
It's changed a little bit. Yeah. What's next for VinWiki? What's next for your social media business? Like, what do you see 5-10 years from now?
It is such a fast-changing landscape, and when you see how much more competitive the newest and hottest content is, I mean, the amount of resources, the amount of time that's being put into each thing. When we were making just good 4K videos that were succinct and well composed 8 years ago, that was unheard of. Now, everybody makes good content. Everybody's doing good things, building crazy cars. And so there aren't the same kind of cheat codes as there used to be for early growth and, audience engagement, things like that. So what it'll look like 5 or 10 years from now, I don't have the slightest clue. I mean, I think if you look at most channels that are of our age, we do start to see a decline in viewership to some extent. And I believe that's because people who subscribed when you did are now interested in other things. They watch YouTube differently. They probably watch YouTube less. They've got kids of their own. They're doing other things. And so I think as the audience grows and as the audience ages, then things inevitably change. And the cool thing is we've got 2,500 back catalog stories that people can start tuning into each day. And we've kind of been able to immortalize the best car stories of so many great storytellers. And I feel very proud of that, particularly when we started to lose some of them, like we lost Rob Pitts last year to cancer. The cool thing was, even though there's already 100 million views of his videos on VinWiki, somebody will watch one for the first time tomorrow. And
Sure.
then they'll go down the rabbit hole, in all the possible puns intended.
No pun intended there.
And get to experience it all for the very first time. And so I'm very pleased that exists, and I think the back catalog will always serve VinWiki well. We've been able to repurpose some of the content towards Reels and Facebook and all the other things that pop up. But I don't know what it looks like. I don't, you see some of these channels selling into multi-channel networks or other companies and things like that. And maybe that happens one day. I mean, I don't think there's any world in which I am not doing this on a regular basis, but I try to just keep an open mind and always try to innovate, buy more cars, have more fun, and go on the next adventure.
My last question for you. You obviously have an awesome set behind you. What is your favorite piece of memorabilia behind you?
My favorite thing on the VinWiki set, I used to keep a lot of broken keys from cars, either cars that were crashed or keys that broke and didn't work anymore. And I wasn't sure what to do with them, but I arranged them into what I call the keyboard. So it's like every day of the week and his and hers, and there's a different exotic car key for every day.
I love it.
And it's just one of those cool things to have. I've got one of the compact computers that you'd use to connect with the modem on a McLaren F1 to do its remote servicing. We got the 2904 trophy back there. There's a oil pan from a Gallardo that John Tamarian put a giant hole in driving abusively and then ghosted me for a few years, and it set the stage for a nice reconciliation.
Oh, I love that. So the greatest thing about what you do in terms of your content is it's real, it's authentic, and I think that's why you've amassed what you've amassed, maybe accidentally, is in a world of so much, forced and inorganic advertising and videos. everything that I've ever seen from your channel, every guest you've ever had is very organic. They're able to be themselves, and I think that's really what sets you apart and really what allows you to be where you're at today. I want to thank you for coming on. I appreciate you, Ed, for taking the time out. Thank you so much. Where can the people find you at?
You can find me on VinWiki.com, VinWiki on YouTube, Facebook, all the places, or Ed Bolian. And I appreciate you watching.
Thanks, Ed. This is What Can We Get Into? We'll catch you next time.